This video is going to be my second look at a mock draft for the Detroit Lions. You guys have to let me know if you enjoy the structure of this video, the way I try to lay it out. I generally in this type of content try to mock out 3 rounds of picks, and there is some conjecture involved here, obviously, but I did put a significant amount of research in here in terms of my own mock drafts and simulations that I had access to. What do you think as a fan that the Lions need? What and how does that align with what Brad Holmes thinks they need? They've addressed multiple spots on the defensive side in free agency, most notably corner, the trade for Carlton Davis III, and the signing of Amik Robertson, who's a little bit more versatile in terms of where he can be deployed as opposed to Carlton Davis, who's generally a left side corner. Signed DJ Reader, incredibly destructive defensive tackle against the run. Marcus Davenport's an interesting signing, 1 year deal, second year in a row that he signed a 1 year deal. Last year only played 4 games, I think, for the Vikings. 6'6", 265, 270 range. He's only 27 years old. He also has a 9-sack season and a 6-sack season to his credit. If he could give the Lions 6 sacks in 2024, I think that's a win. It'd be a great off-season for Detroit if Brad Holmes can figure out a way to future-proof the offensive line, particularly the interior guys, in this draft, and also bolster the defense and the offense at the same time. There's a lot to be done until training camp begins. Navigating this draft is next. Holmes in the front office did a historic job last year with the 2023 draft. Sitting at 29 this year is vastly different than 6 and 18 going into the 2023 draft. It turned out to be Gibbs and Campbell at 12 and 18. Do the Lions still need depth at corner at 29? I think it's a yes. But what if there's a high-level O-line that's there that Detroit sees as a possible starter? Either now or a year from now, when presumably one or two of the interior guard center guard combination is gone, possibly. Will the Lions also entertain trade back options there at 29? Part of me hopes so for their sake, and part of me clearly does not. The tackle situation for the Ravens means that, for me at least, until the Lions actually pick at 29, which they will not pick a tackle, obviously, whoever it is, corner, outside linebacker, interior offensive lineman, I won't be able to relax because since the Ravens and the 49ers at 31 both are apparently in on tackles, I am absolutely certain that teams will be calling Brad Holmes to try to trade back in at 29 and get the last or one of the last high-level offensive tackles that's still on the board. I say that and recognize that, how it occurs on draft night a month from now could be vastly different. And the reality is there's always tackles, guards, or centers picked in round 2, 3, or 4 that end up starting each season and doing a really good job, and that's going to occur in 2024 as well. I'm going to go through possibilities here and the ones that I think are the most likely. And so starting for the Lions with the guy that I think is most certain to be there late in the first round, early mid 20s, and I can foresee absolutely falling to 29 is Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think Cooper DeJean is probably gone by then. Everybody has him mocked to Green Bay. Could outside linebacker D-end be the pick here? Absolutely. I think Darius Robinson is from Missouri. He kind of fits the Davenport build and kind of fits the larger, physically imposing group that Detroit is crafting on defense, at least their front seven. 6'5", 280, 285 plus, right in line with Davenport, who I think is 6'6", 270, somewhere in that range. I'll be honest with you. I am not in favor of the Lions taking Chop Robinson here. I think they already have a small, stocky speed rusher in James Houston IV, who, in fact, in my opinion, is a better player than Chop Robinson. The film for Chop Robinson does not scream first-round pick to me. I think he's a very talented football player. He's extremely good on inside stunts or slants. Having said that, and I understand that opinions will vary, for me, his 40 time at the combine doesn't outweigh the lack of impact across two seasons. Now, granted, Manny Diaz's defense was chaotic and utilized a bunch of different stunts, so Perhaps his stats being suppressed as a result of that. But to me, nothing looks like a first team outside linebacker when you take into consideration the lack of consistent statistical output, low number of snaps, and then height, weight, arm length, and hand size that all measure below the 32nd percentile. Anyway, the options are plentiful there. I don't think interior offensive line is going to be addressed at 29. Glasgow, I think, is going to turn 32. Zeitler is already 34. Ragnow, who received questions or fielded questions about retiring, even though he's only 27, he's back. I think they can address guard center later on. And in my first scenario here for the Lions, I have them taking Kool-Aid McKinstry and just drastically changing their secondary unit, their secondary room in one off season. If Dijon and McKinstry were both there at 29, I would advocate for taking McKinstry. He spent some time as a slot defender. Dijon appears to be projected to potentially move there, play some outside corner, play some safety. I think both of those guys are going to be exceptional defensive players at the NFL level in the secondary for a long time. In my opinion, McKinstry has the athletic ability, the intelligence, the IQ, and the game savvy to play outside and allow the team to be a little bit more versatile in coverage, going from man, zone, and some of the split field quarters coverages that I think the Lions could move to help them slow down the processing of quarterbacks. If you were looking to take Mike Sainristil at 61 or maybe 73, I don't think he'll fall that far. I think he's got a lot of conflict with the signing of Robertson. I think those two guys are generally, quite similar in that they both can play outside corner and they're very good at it, but they've also been exceptional at slot corner nickel. For those reasons and for how effective McKinstry was at Alabama, I think he had 16 passes defense last year, no interceptions. I'm going to project him being the pick here with Chop Robinson still on the board and possibly wide receivers like Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy, after I would project, just like everybody else, Adonai Mitchell ending up in Buffalo. The trade back options, I think, are there or will be there for Detroit. Some of them that I have read in the last couple of days appear to be a little bit unrealistic. One of them had Washington giving up 36 and 40 to move back into the first round at 29. I don't know who they would be targeting. I guess maybe a tackle, perhaps similar to the scenario I described earlier. Once they've taken a quarterback at 2, and if you're Brad Holmes, look, you listen to that offer. Hey, you'll give me 36 and 40, and I get to just give you 29. I can move back. There's still going to be some really good corners on the board and guys who can help the offensive line. Sainristil, TJ Tampa, two of my favorites at the corner position, Renardo Green and Max Melton, a guy who played like 4 or 5 games this year with a broken hand that no one knew about. If I was Washington, I wouldn't trade away 36 and 40 for 29, but who knows what their plan is. Nothing would surprise me on draft night, but you as a Lions fan, I'm sure it would be tough to watch them not make a pick on opening night in Detroit. The other, I think, perhaps more realistic trade partner might be the Panthers, who don't have a first-round pick, but they're sitting at 33 and 39, as well as an early third-round pick at 65. I think that Brad Holmes is going to stay put here in this scenario, but look, if a bidding war ensues over pick 29, I can see anything going down. Once that clock starts and it's their pick is up, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 teams, I think, trying to leapfrog the Ravens and 49ers to grab one of the last high-level tackles that's on the board. From a Ravens perspective, I hope he says no. With pick 2 in the second round, there'll be some immediate starters that go off the board between 29 and 61, and you could have your choice here. Braylon Trice, Marshawn Neeland is who I'm projecting. Braswell, the guy from Alabama, I think he's gone prior to 61. I'm not really sure in the case of Trice. I don't think he's as athletic as Braswell. And given that the Lions turn right around and pick at 73, for me, if any of those guys, Trice, Neeland, or Braswell, was on the board at 61, I think you take them. And again, I think the other two are gone, and that's why I'm projecting Neeland here. But certainly you could go interior offensive line. It's one of the reasons why, if you ask me, you go corner in round 1. The board could fall any kind of way, but based on their simulations, the Lions could end up moving forward to take a guy like Braswell if they think that's who is their best option. But as you all guys all know, Chris Spielman apparently went to Western Michigan's pro day and spent a lot of time there. It would not surprise me if it was to spend time checking out Nealand and seeing if he was their guy. Round 3 selection here, I have them targeting guys like BB, Christian Mahogany. Those are all possibilities. Zach Zinter could be a later choice to grab O-line depth. Of course, he had the injury situation. I don't think that they would be looking to take him at 73 as a result. Mahogany had a spectacular 2003 after an ACL injury in 2022. I think it's a strong possibility that he's the pick here. I'm open to the possibility it could be a wide receiver, to be honest with you. I know that sounds a little crazy because you've got St. Brown, Jamison Williams, DPJ, Khalif Raymond, all under contract for 2024. They're going to have to pay St. Brown at some point. There could be a wide receiver out there at 73, the likes of which the Lions value tremendously. The problem is, with no fourth-round pick to rely on, you're kind of locked in some ways, to trying to improve the interior offensive line, either at 61 or 73, barring a trade, that is, because Detroit's going to have to wait almost 100 picks to make their next selection in round 5. I think that's why you've got to address corner, interior offensive line, and outside linebacker with these 3 selections and take the best high-level talent that's there at 29 if you don't trade back to a team like Washington or Carolina. I have Mahogany slotted here with the caveat that maybe there's a receiver that the Lions front office is really high on, Javon Baker, Malachi Corley, Walker from North Carolina, who a lot of people have complained about since the Senior Bowl. Personally, I don't think that's what Detroit does. I think they improve the roster where they need to here in the draft because they have a long time to wait from pick 73 to pick 164 or whatever. An interior offensive line in this scenario is the third of those 3 positions to try to improve. To get out of there, if you ask me, at 29, 61, and 73, with these 3 guys, McKinstry, Nealand, and Mahogany, I don't think a guy like BB's there in round 3 to take. I hope I am wrong. I hope BB is there because I think I would prefer him over Mahogany just because of the knee injury situation. But look, this is a really good start for the Lions in this draft. Perhaps not as overwhelming as 2023, which was, as I referred to it earlier, I think borderline historic. Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, Branch, all potential all-pro caliber guys, and then Hendon Hooker. Just a ridiculous draft that they were able to pull off last year. I don't think that Brad Holmes can possibly top or match that this year. Perhaps you don't prefer the players that I've slotted in these 3 positions. It's no problem. I try to be realistic about who will be available at each spot. So, for example, the Braswell and Trice situation, don't think they'll be there at 61, nor do I think a guy like St. Riestel will, which is why I think you go corner at 29 with the best player who's available. So part of it will be how different are the Lions simulations from what you and I think versus who they believe will be available. Something crazy could happen. Maybe the best outside linebacker in the draft, in my opinion, the most talented one, Latu, maybe he's available at 29. Maybe Jackson Powers Johnson is there. Neither one of those is bound to happen, but those are the best at their respective positions in this draft, if you ask me. Could something like that happen, which would drastically alter the Lions' manner of dealing with these 3 positions, corner, interior offensive line, and an outside linebacker D end? If you were to get some crazy return from Washington, 36 and 40 to go along with 61 and 73. Would the Lions prefer that? Adding depth, 4 premier young players added to the roster just a year before a whole bunch of guys have got to get paid, namely St. Brown, Sewell, and Goff. That haul would look pretty good, and I couldn't argue against it. Not selecting in round 1, I know, would be disappointing for Detroit fans. Probably doesn't sound fun at all to you. I think Brad Holmes and the front office are uniquely prepared for this one in the same ways last year, but it's a different mentality. Maybe we won't see any table pounding, or maybe we won't see Brad Holmes punching Dan Campbell in the thigh or the ribs or whatever it was. I think they know the groups of players they want in each spot to address their needs and to not just field another Super Bowl contender in 2024, because that's what they were last year. I know in some ways it might be difficult or crazy for Lions fans to even hear that said, but that's the reality. They don't just want to field a Super Bowl contender for one more year. They want to do that for 2 or 3 more with the core group of players, adding as many high-level players as possible at low cost is important with all those other salary considerations looming. They've done a great job of building the roster, in my opinion. From a film study standpoint, I'm going to refer to a point that I made later in the season. They mitigated the known weaknesses of the team from a coaching staff standpoint, meaning they were able to change tactics defensively to accommodate or as a result of their lack of corner talent and inability to get consistent pass rush from an organic pressure platform, meaning 4-man rushes. They went to more pressure-oriented scheme, more blitzes, somewhere around week 13, 14, or 15 in that area. It seemed to be an obvious tactical decision. Why do I mention this? Well, the coaching staff adapted, I think, during the season and gave themselves a chance. I believe prior to the 49ers game, you're talking about 6 games in a row where they gave up 21 points or less and clearly should have won the Dallas game. That ability to adapt is what I'm referring to that has to transfer to the front office. It's the same quality that'll get tested 4 weeks from today or almost 4 weeks from today. The Lions will be on the clock after the Bills make their choice. They'll have 10 minutes with the clock counting down before they've got to turn that card in or decide to trade the pick. In my opinion, they stand pat in this scenario and get the best player available to them at one of the 3 positions they have to address. Is Darius Robinson, going to be a good defensive end? Absolutely. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry offers a higher ceiling at the corner position for them to really drastically change the tone of their defense, their ability to play man and match up with pretty much every single team that they'll see on the schedule next year. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I don't go beyond round 3 in these types of videos. I think it's really stretching credibility for me to try to project them on a large scale to round 4, 5, and 6. I will do at least one more of these style videos if you guys enjoy them, that is. If you don't, then feel free to let me know. I like the scenario type content whereby I try to address the needs I think are there, and I do obviously do some research, reading, watch videos occasionally while I'm editing other content to listen to what people put out there and look at the mock draft database like I'm sure most of you guys do. Package these 3 players together to try to describe how the Lions get there in this scenario. McKinstry, Nealand, and Mahogany, I think, meet the needs of the Detroit Lions roster. I usually like to do one scenario where the GM for each team goes kind of batshit crazy, or each team that I cover, I should say, and either trades up or trades back and possibly includes a player on the roster to help manipulate or accentuate that trade. And so I'm not sure how to do that with Brad Holmes and Eric DaCosta, the GMs of the Lions and the Ravens, first because they're so good at their job and they're so prepared for that 10-minute situation where they'll get a choice to either make a pick that impacts everyone else in the building or trade back to try to recoup more assets. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy this content, my projection or scenario of how the Lions can end up addressing their 3 greatest needs in the first 3 rounds, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.